23 Best New TV Shows of 2023. Every year, dozens of new TV shows premiere. It's practically impossible to catch them all, especially if you want to watch shows that, you know, have been running for years and you already enjoy them. However, there were a few new shows in 2023 that are worth your time. Finding them can sometimes be a little tricky. You may not have all the streaming services you need. Like we said, but it's impossible to get everything these days. Just do what you can, or rather what you love. 1 of 23. Paul T. Goldman. On the first day of 2023, Paul T. Goldman first appeared on Puck, and even now it's confusing as Jason Wolner's 6-part series wraps around. It's a true crime documentary, but it's also a true crime satire, but it's also a weird meta-series that deliberately breaks the rules of documentary. The story centers on Paul Finkelman, who plays Paul T. Goldman in the in-series remakes, and that tells you everything, but it also tells you nothing. 2 of 23. The Last of Us. Just as you don't need to read George R.R.'s books to get into HBO's Game of Thrones. It wasn't Martin, you don't have to be into video games to jump on the Last of Us bandwagon. The presence of Pedro Pascal in the main role definitely helped. The post-apocalyptic story turned into HBO's latest gripping drama to remind us that, oh yes, some TV is still date TV. 3 of 23. Poker Face. Natasha Lyonne may not actually be playing Columbo, an idea that spawned internet fodder, but she jumped at the chance to bring her own distinct style to each week's proceedings. Lyons plays a woman on the run with a knack for knowing who's lying, and an itch to do the right thing across the country. She's a standout performer, but we think she was great, as she was in Russian Doll. 4 of 23. Digman. Do you like the idea of a comedy version of Indiana Jones? Then Digman. Andy Samberg co-created the show, which he also voices, and it's supposed to take place in a world where archaeologists are celebrities. Comedy Central's original shows have certainly taken a hit in the age of cord cutting, but sometimes there's something worth checking out. 5 of 23. Jury Duty. What if the Joe Ashmo show was critically acclaimed? Jury Duty didn't seem to make a fuss. It's your classic liar reality show where one person thinks they're in a real situation but everyone else is an actor. However, Jury Duty managed to earn an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Comedy Series, and James Marsden, yes, the famous actor, received an Emmy nomination for playing a version of himself. 6 of 23. Mayhem of the Muppets. In many ways, the latest Muppets TV show sticks to its form. This puppeteer is family-friendly and filled with famous artwork. However, the Muppets Mayhem has sharper writing and funnier content than much of the brand's recent output. Plus, being built around the Electric Mayhem, there's an excuse for tons of songs. 7 of 23. Skull Island. The movie Kong, Skull Island introduced the idea of an island world that gave us King Kong. It was a period piece, as is the Netflix show Skull Island. Set in the 90s, the anime is heavily animated in a style that borrows from anime aesthetics. This is very fitting for a show with the premise of Skull Island. 8 of 23. Warp Metal. Twisted Metal was a favorite of many PlayStation enthusiasts at the time. You can drive an ice cream truck and blow things up. That game's sandbox became the backdrop for a TV show that matched the ethos of video games. It's vulgar, it's violent, and it features a killer clown named Sweet Tooth. 9 of 23. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Return to the world of Godzilla and Kong movies in the modern era. The film takes place in the Monsterverse and focuses on the Monarch organization as it deals with monsters from the decades. Speaking of consecutive decades, the main point of Monster Legacy is that Wyatt Russell plays a younger version of the same character played by his real-life father, Kurt Russell. 10 of 23. Scott Pilgrim Rises. Years later, Edgar Wright's cult film Scott Pilgrim vs. the World had a sequel. Although not a movie, but an anime-style series on Netflix. Wright returned, but so did the cast of the film, who lent their voices to the show. 11 of 23. Night Court. Yes, Night Court was a sitcom at the time, but the 2023 reboot was essentially a new show. John Larroquette returns as Dan Fielding, the role that won him Emmy after Emmy, but otherwise it's basically a new sitcom in the same universe, including Melissa Roche as Judge Harry Stone's daughter from the original series is playing. While the old sitcom's tone may be a little different from modern times, it's a good sitcom and a chance to see Larroquette on stage. On 12 of 23. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Look, it's an animated show called Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. It's based on a Marvel comic. The show gave Disney Channel audiences a superhero show for them, an animated one at that. It looks cool, and again, the title is awesome. 13 of 23. Animal Control. Joel McHale has bounced around quite a bit since the end of Community, but it seems like his new sitcom will stick. Animal Control is about, well, an animal control department. McHale doesn't reinvent the wheel in terms of his comedic persona, but that isn't necessary for a network sitcom. The show has been renewed for a second season, keeping the animal-related humor going. 14 of 23. The Consultant. Amazon Prime has a history of producing original drama series with impressive leads that kind of fly under the radar. Meanwhile, everybody is boshing it up over at Bosch. The Consultant stars Christoph Waltz, a two-time Oscar winner, and he got plenty of praise for his performance in this darkly comedic thriller, unsurprisingly. 15 of 23. The Diplomat. The Diplomat is straightforward, a classic potboiler political thriller. However, by dint of being on Netflix, it's able to be more risque than shows of this ilk on network television. Kerry Russell stars in the lead role. Now, maybe the show isn't as dense and rich as The Americans, but it's designed to be breezier, and Russell still got an Emmy nomination. 16 of 23. Jeopardy! Masters. Yeah, Jeopardy! Masters is effectively just Jeopardy, but it is a new show. Ken Jennings, now a host and retired from active competition, saw some of the best Jeopardy! Players of all time competing in a tournament. The primetime special lasted for 10 episodes and really satisfied the die-hard Jeopardy! Fans looking to see the best of the best in action. 17 of 23. American-born Chinese. Disney Plus's action-focused output is largely built upon the Marvel Cinematic Universe. American-born Chinese steps outside that paradigm. While neither of them is the star, the show does notably feature two recent Oscar winners in Ke Huy Quan and Michelle Yeoh. Isn't that alone worth checking out? 18 of 23. Goosebumps. There was previously a Goosebumps show, but that was episodic and mostly just rehashing of the stories from the R.L. Stine books. The new Disney Plus show does things differently. It's an ongoing family-friendly horror show that tells an overarching story that involves many elements of the books. Yes, Slappy the Dummy is prominently involved. 19 of 23. History of the World, Part 2. Mel Brooks naming his film History of the World, Part I was a joke, but that joke paid off decades later. Instead of making another movie, Brooks helped helm a limited series on Hulu that serves as a sequel. This allowed Brooks and crew to flesh out the comedic set pieces throughout history. Wanda Sykes, Nick Kroll, and Ike Barinholtz served as the recurring main cast, but with plenty of notable cameos, naturally. 20 of 23. White House Plumbers. You likely know at least something about Watergate, and perhaps have even heard of the plumbers, who did some dirty work to try and ensure the re-election of Richard Nixon. HBO's limited series focused on two of these plumbers, E. Howard Hunt and G. Gordon Liddy. While the tone of the show was a bit inconsistent, it's satirical and dramatic simultaneously. The peaks make up for the valleys, and Justin Theroux was entertaining as Liddy. 21 of 23. Love and Death. The dramatization of true crime stories has become commonplace, but sometimes the cast draws attention, even to a sordid story of small-town murder. David E. Kelley wrote and directed Love and Death, which had the benefit of a cast led by Elizabeth Olsen and Jesse Plemons, two excellent actors. 22 of 23. Justified, City Primeval. City Primeval is sort of a sequel series to Justified, but also definitely a standalone series. If you haven't seen the original FX show, you could still enjoy City Primeval, based on a different Elmore Leonard book that doesn't involve Raylan Givens. Timothy Olyphant as Raylan was infused into the Detroit set story. It's a taut thriller, and it was great to see Olyphant as Marshall Givens once again. 23 of 23. Ahsoka. If you just want action from your Star Wars series, go with Ahsoka. It starts a little slow. Sabina Wren has a lot of Poochie vibes early on, but then it took off with gusto. If you watched, say, Andor, and found yourself thinking, just fight each other with lightsabers, then you should be satisfied.